Welcome to another OU Insider YouTube Live. I'm here with Parker Thune. We got a producer on the other side that one day we will announce, and eventually he will be a name on OU Insider, and you guys will know him. But until then, it is Parker Thune. It's myself, Brandon Drumm, and we are here to talk to you guys. We are here to discuss all things Oklahoma, all things recruiting. You got it, you want it, whether it's basketball, football, national signing days rolling around, transfer portal. We're going to discuss all of that on this live show for you guys right now. Parker, how have you been? I am getting over something. I believe I know what it was, and I've been cooped up for that very reason.
Is that your way of telling us you had the Omnicorn, Brandon?
I don't know, man. It swept through the house pretty viciously, and I didn't ever run a fever though. Never ran a fever, and it was only like a 2-day thing. Like Sunday, we were okay. Yesterday, or Monday and Tuesday, boom. Today, I'm like, oh, I'm better. Yesterday, I zonked at 7:30 in the evening. Was typing my notes up and fell asleep, and I was like, I didn't wake up till 10:30 this morning. I mean, it was that bad.
Well, while you were snoozing, Oklahoma picked up a new transfer, number 10.
I saw that.
Tyler Guyton out of TCU.
Yeah, and are they back in the top 5 of the transfer portal rankings with that move?
I don't know. I do know it right now, based on the proprietary metric by 24/7 Sports that combines prep rankings and transfer portal rankings. Oklahoma right now collectively has the number 8 overall class in the country.
Not bad. I think Oklahoma fans will take that. That is a national title contending type of haul. If you were, when people talk about that all the time, I'm like, well, you can't win a national title unless you have a top 10 class. Well, there's some truth to that. Clemson kind of debunked that a couple times, but other than that, there's some valid truth to that. I just think that I don't know that it's that cut and dry. You can have, like Clemson, they had a generational talent at quarterback too that took them to the promised land. And if everybody wants to know what this is porcelain. I cut my finger. I had to replace our toilet, and I cut my finger on the porcelain. My porcelain's sharp.
Dang, been a rough couple days for you, Brandon.
Yeah, this was a couple days ago.
Yeah, hold it together. By the way, if y'all have questions for us to answer throughout this live, go ahead and drop them in the comments, and we will get to them throughout the program. We're going to go all the way up until about 6 p.m. I know the Monday one that we ended up doing was a little bit shorter just because I was flying solo, but you got the double team this time around. So we will do our best to hit all of your questions throughout here, Brandon. But I suppose let's start right there with Tyler Guyton, a guy that stands 6'7", weighs in at 315 pounds, played offensive tackle and H-back this past year for TCU. So quite an interesting positional fit there, quite an interesting blend of abilities. And he's versatile, but not in a traditional sense. Very rarely do you see a guy seeing time at offensive tackle and H-back. So as we kind of look at the picture of this Oklahoma offensive line heading into 2022, Brandon, it appears evident that McCade Mathier is going to be the leader in the clubhouse to replace Marquise Hayes at that vacant guard position. What's not as clear is who's going to start at tackle opposite Anton Harrison. And Tyler Guyton is going to have as good a shot as anybody to assert himself in that race. Is Anton Harrison a guaranteed starter? I think that's another question everybody needs, because he struggled holding it down last year after being that guy in 2020. 2021, he was up and down, very sporadic as far as his play, inconsistent, and it showed on the field, and it showed with his playing time at times where he wasn't around out there, and they started playing a lot of older guys and moving, Tyrese Robinson out there and doing a lot of different things. And Bill Beanabo was just trying to find that niche. I think they found it at the end of the year. And I think
Anton took that step to where he kind of, the light bulb came on. It's like, oh, I got to focus week in and week out. But with Tyler Guyton, he's a large human being, number one, and he's an athletic human being. I think that is probably the biggest takeaway. Is he's raw. I don't know that he's as developed as a lot of the guys that are going to be returning for Bill Bedenbaugh are right now. And that goes even with the Savion Bird, who obviously didn't travel. He had some issues off the field that, he's taken care of. He's trying to get back right with, and that's about as much as we'll add to that. But there's high expectations for Savion Bird. There's a lot of people that feel like come August next year that he could be that guy, that leader, as far as being one of the fast risers, that next big name on the Oklahoma offensive line. And then you have Anton Harrison, you got McKay McTwire, you obviously have the return of Robert Congo and Andrew Rame at the center position, and those two are going to battle it out. And here's the thing I have to ask: if one of those guys doesn't start, why would you not make one of them a guard, and or at least, the funny thing is Andrew Rame could probably play tackle if he wanted to. He's that athletic. He's that talented. Like, he's a freak show of a talent. And I think once he figures it out, the world's his oyster. I mean, the guy can do whatever he wants. I think it's just going to be him, continue to work with his fundamentals. He's very still raw, needs to get stronger up top. But athletically, it is hard to beat what Andrew Rame has available to him as a player, because he's one of the best I have seen as far as movement ever. And I watched a lot of the linemen, and when I went and watched him play for Broken Arrow, and obviously at a couple of the camps and stuff like that, he was always head and shoulders above everybody as far as athleticism. And you can tell by just the way he walks, he doesn't have like a stiff walk. He's got kind of that swag, that kind of, I don't know. I told his dad that one day. I was like, he walks smooth. Everything about Andrew is smooth. And he's another guy I think that has a chance to make a huge step, especially after Schmitty gets a hold of him. I think that's going to be the big key. It's his strength, getting that next step as far as his strength goes, and see where that takes him, because I think mentally he's going to have it after this year, learning under Congo from last year.
I think Schmitty is going to separate the men from the boys, particularly in the offensive line room. Like, I really do believe we'll find out in 2022 whether Bray Walker really just was a massive whiff, or whether he's just had his potential go untapped all these years under Benny Wiley. So it's guys like that you look at as probably the most immediate case studies into Jerry Schmidt's impact on this football team.
Oh yeah. I mean, Anton Harrison. I think another guy is Chris Murray. I think seeing his jump under a Jerry Schmidt is going to be massive, because again, a guy with all the tools in the world, was an all Pac-12 type guy when he came from UCLA, sort of regressed after he got to Oklahoma, and wasn't able to make that huge jump that everybody thought he was going to be. Everybody's like, oh my God, he's only going to be at Oklahoma for you remember how big a deal it was that he wasn't eligible at one point whenever he first transferred? That was a big deal. People tend to forget how big of a transfer that was when Oklahoma got him, because that was like, everybody raised their eyebrows like, holy crap, the rich is getting richer. That's unfair. And to learn from Bill Bedenbaugh. But I think the strength and conditioning, I think everything that encompassed that, the lack of accountability on the squad last year and the years previous, reared its head with certain kids. And I think that is going to change in 2022. I think accountability is number one on the forefront as far as what, Brent Venables wants to bring to this program. And I think it starts on the offensive line, and having them accountable, having them working hard, having them show up day in and day out to notch those, as you saw Jerry Smith say, good days on top of each other. Because if they don't, you're looking at another 2021 season. I know OU fans don't want to see that, and Brent Venables doesn't want to see that in his first year as a head coach.
All right, Brandon, let's move on and discuss the rankings update that came out today per our national experts in the 24/7 Sports Recruiting and Rankings Council. Now, as I mentioned before the show, it is not a good day for the contingent that 8 months ago was shouting that local kid Robert Spears-Jennings isn't good enough for an OU offer. Why are they pursuing him? Well, as of today, Brandon, he's the number 129 overall player per the 24/7 Sports composite, not just the 24/7 rankings, but that is composite.
Yeah.
And the number 11 overall safety in the country.
Not bad. Not bad. We talked about him when he got the offer, and I know people like blast us. We're like, guys, like I saw him, and I tell this story all the time. So, and I kid you not. And I think he's told you this story about me. Like the first time I ever met him, he had just moved from Mansfield. I went out to see Andrew Rame. I went out to see Miles Slusher. I went out to see Marion Horn. And I went to go see all those guys at Broken Arrow. And there was this kid out running around, long, lanky, really fast, really athletic. And I walk over to Coach Alexander and I said, and who was the head coach at that point in time? Now it's obviously Josh Blankenship, and Alexander's at Jinx now. But I walk over to Coach Alexander and I said, that kid, who is that? He goes, oh, his name's Robert Spears-Jennings. He actually just went by Robert Jennings or something when he first showed up, if I remember correctly. And I was like, wow, man, he's long, athletic, and run. He goes, yeah, he's going to do something for us, whether it's wide receiver, running back, defensive back. He goes, we're so loaded at defensive back. And I remember walking over to Robert Spears-Jennings, and I looked over at him, and I called him over, and I introduced myself to him. I said, you know what, man? You have the frame, the athleticism, and just that look of you're going to be able to put weight on, number one. Number two, you could be a damn good safety if you actually put your mind to it. And he just kind of smiled at me, and he goes, yeah, I'd play safety, but they have all those guys out there. And he named them off. And I was like, yeah, but you're a sophomore. Like, you have time. And long story short, he was going to play safety and actually did play safety for Broken Arrow. Was a good safety for him as a kind of a rotational guy, but they got injuries at their wide receiver position, became really short as far as their depth goes there. So they moved Jennings over there, and the rest is history. He became one of the top wide receivers in the country. And he was a 3-star, like a high 3-star guy. Didn't have the offers everybody thought he should have. And he goes down. Oklahoma's kind of watching his film. They look at him. They're like, dang, man, like, look at that kid's frame. Look how big he is. I don't know that he's going to stay wide receiver when he gets to college. And so Oklahoma calls him down. He goes through a workout with then defensive coordinator Alex Grinch, Roy Manning. Drew Hill was there from the player development. All these guys were in there watching. Well, I don't know. Drew Hill was there, actually. I know that all the guys were in there watching as far as like the player development guys, not the player development, but the safeties, the defensive backs, all the coaches were in there watching. And next thing you know, the kid's got an offer, and he runs like a 4.3, does all that. And man, it is, he gets the offer and everybody's like, why? Like, why is he getting an offer? He's not a high 3-star, or he's a high 3-star, but he's a wide receiver. And, oh, you can do better than that. He didn't even hardly play any safety, blah, blah, blah. He goes and dominates every camp at the safety position. Moves over to safety during the 2021 football season, becomes an absolute beast at safety, and goes down to the All-American camp and wins the fastest man competition. And not only that, is one of the alpha dogs each and every day at the practices, making plays, intercepting the ball. It was a 7-on-7 tournament that Brian Doan called me after he gets the Oklahoma offer and commits to OU. I think I talked to you about it. And he says, that guy right there is going to be something, and he is going to be a top 150 kid before it's all said and done. Brian Doan called it. And after just watching him one time at a 7-on-7 tournament, that to me, he goes, he doesn't play a lot of defensive back for the 7-on-7 squad, but you can see how it translates over to defense with all that he does. I don't know. And like you said, it is a bad look for those that hated on him when he first showed up. And now everybody can't wait for that kid to get on campus because he's one of the top players in the country.
No doubt. By the way, there's also a new top dog among the Oklahoma contingent of commits and signees, and it is none other than the pride of Hays, Kansas himself, Jaren Kanack, the number 107 overall player in the 24/7 Sports rankings update today. Now, there was a time, right, where Gentry Williams, Gavin Sawchuk, Kobe McKenzie, all those guys were up at the top within the top 50. And for one reason or another, all those guys saw a bit of a slide down the rankings. Conversely,
and we don't agree with a lot of that stuff. We obviously we have our own, evaluation.
We don't make the rankings.
Yeah, we don't make the rankings. Yeah. So
disclaimer.
Don't hate on us. Don't hate on us. Though I do think 247 does the best job, bar none. I think because they have so many eyes on it. We put in our evaluations. They listen to them. There's a reason why a lot of these guys move up. And sometimes when guys move down, it's because other people put in their evaluations from across the country for other people that the committee sees and thinks that they're better. It's not a bias. It's not biased. Like everybody's just kind of got a number, there's no name stacked to it. They match, it's a very unbiased process. So everybody's like, well, they hate OU, and that's not true at all. But I want to say something like Kanack. Since he's been in Norman, they did testing, and that kid has an 11-foot broad jump. He has a 40-inch vert. He ran a 4.4, and I believe he threw up 12 benches at 275. That's where you say hashtag
that
freak.
Is a freakish.
Yeah.
Proper word to describe that kind of athleticism is freakish. That is a dude that Oklahoma's getting in Jaren Kanack. And it's funny, Brandon, we talked about all those guys that were highly ranked or much more highly ranked at a certain point in the cycle. Gentry Williams, Gavin Sawchuk, Kobe McKenzie, guys of that ilk. Then you have a guy in Jaren Kanack who didn't even play football his sophomore year of high school because he had back issues. He didn't go to any of the elite camps, combines, all-American showcases, none of that. He's just a guy that works out and plays football out in Western Kansas.
He's got good track numbers, though.
Oh, yeah. At the end of the cycle, that dude is higher ranked than any of his peers in Oklahoma's class of 2022.
Right. Yep. And it's not a done class. I mean, I think Oklahoma, we'd be remiss if we didn't say, look, they've got a shot at Josh Connerly. Obviously, they've got a shot to land. And I don't know that, obviously, I don't think it's not going to make a difference as far as the top guy, but you got a chance to land, Grayson Halton. You have a chance to land Ahmed Moten or Mason Thomas. Cavante Henry. Oh yeah, you can't forget about him. And Oklahoma's in a really good spot with Cavante Henry. I think better than most want to admit. And if they pull that off, I'm telling people right now, like it's changing around Oklahoma. When you look and I haven't confirmed some of these visits that I've had people tell me about that's going to happen for the junior day. They're coming from all over the country and they're like elite guys. And then when you see DJ Hicks show up and Oklahoma's starting to get crystal balls, and mind you, he shows up along with Anthony Hill, along with Peyton Bowen, whenever there's a Texas Longhorn Junior Day going on. That speaks volumes for where the kids' heads are at. And I think you can't hate on the previous staff for they started, the relationship, and the staff now has taken it to a whole nother level. Those guys they're just different. The new staff is just different on the recruiting trail than OU fans are probably used to. So it's kind of a shock right now when you see what's going on, when you see a 5-star defensive lineman already getting crystal balled or whatever you call it for the other company to Oklahoma in January. That's different. That's just a different deal. And there's no legacy there. It's not like a Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy where there was a legacy deal and he eventually committed to Oklahoma only to watch the staff change and he took another route. But this is different. This staff has and they're recruiting differently. They're out in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana. Like they're not just staying in Texas, California, Florida, and that's where they're going to make their haul at, and go into Arizona every now and then, Nevada. That seemed what the other staff would do. This staff is saying, we want SEC level guys, and we're going to attack the SEC region and make that happen one way or the other. And we'll see where it all lands when it's all said and done. But they've done a fantastic job starting out on the recruiting trail for 2023 and 2024.
Juice, as we like to call it, for Brent Venables and that new staff. And
Yeah.
the impact has been immediate. You don't have to look any further. And let's turn the page then, Brandon, to the next topic that we need to hit on, which is the decommitment today from Grayson Halton, who had been committed to Oregon for 1 day short of a full year.
Yeah. Now, and I mean, you probably could sense that. I don't know that you can actually say that, because he was looking at Oklahoma prior to the move of Cristobal. So, and it was something we talked about at OU Insider. They offered him. Cristobal was still the coach at Oregon at the time. And there was buzz that he was going to take a visit in January. And then he came out and said it. Yeah, I'm going to visit Oklahoma in January. Of course, at the time, Jalil Florence was too. But that seems to have changed, and now he's down to USC and Oregon. He's not taking any more visits. And, he was one of the top safeties in the country. Oklahoma looked like they were making a push for him, and it looked like they were going to get him on campus and had a really good shot at landing him at one point. And that changed, and that changed quickly. That said, Grayson Halton never deterred from that decision to take a visit to Oklahoma, and it looks like it's going to pan out for OU. I mean, whether it was Cristobal staying at Oregon, whether it's Dan landing at Oregon, I don't think it was going to matter, because at that point in time, the second OU offered, the interest was there from the kid and the family. They actually have a connection with Tony Jefferson's dad and Tony Jefferson Jr. So there's that connection. They've known Kenny Stills, they've known Brennan Clay. So this connection kind of goes a long ways back to Oklahoma, where Grayson Halton and that family just kind of had an interest there because of stuff that San Diego guys that had previously been successful at OU and played at a high level and made it to the NFL. So of course that was going to make a lot of sense to them. And in the end, we'll see if Grayson announces on National Signing Day one way or the other. But, it looks right now that Oklahoma's in a really good spot to land the 4-star defensive lineman. And yet again, proving the point. Like, this is a kid that played wide receiver, played tight end, did a lot of things for his high school squad that most defensive linemen can't do. So he's a super freak athlete and a really good get for Brent Venables and Todd Bates and company if they can make that happen.
Okay, so Brandon, go ahead and put your chips on the table. There are 7 guys down the stretch here that Oklahoma is still in the mix for that are unsigned. You have the 2 5-star offensive linemen in Devin Campbell and Josh Connerly. You have the Cardinal Gibbons teammates in R. Mason Thomas and Ahmad Moten. You have Cavante Henry. And then, of course, you have Grayson Halton and Jamarian Burt. So of those 7, which ones do you think Oklahoma ends up with? If you had to project right now, and obviously a lot can change a week and a half before National Signing Day, but for right now, as things stand, who's a Sooner and who's not?
I want to say, obviously, I'll start with Grayson Halton. I think OU's in a really good spot there. I think that's obvious. And I think his dad kind of makes it known, like they like Oklahoma a lot. He's on the spaces and all that stuff. Jamarian Burt, I'll call, but I want to put a caveat out there for this, a disclaimer. Missouri could offer his brother. And if that happens, I think he ends up at Missouri. And OU was a place that Jamarian Burt wants to be. He wants to be in Norman. He all but tried to make that official with Oklahoma. And they said, no. This is the new thing in Norman, mind you. If you commit to the University of Oklahoma, there is no visits made. You are committed to OU. They aren't going to recruit over you. They're going to keep their word if you keep your word. So I'll say Jamarian Burt. with the caveat of if he does make that visit to Missouri, I think, I don't know that that's going to end up being the case. I don't think OU ends up with Devin Campbell, DJ Campbell, the 5-star offensive lineman from Arlington. I think that's Texas. I think OU feels decent about Josh Connerly, but we're not going to know till March. So that's going to be the issue there. Like, he's going to take several visits, and OU's going to have to really, really put in some work to make that happen. So in the long run, I don't know that they end up with Josh Connerly, but I think they do have a really good shot. I think Miami lands one of the two between Ahmed Moten and R. Mason Thomas. I'm going to say OU gets R. Mason Thomas and Miami gets Ahmed Moten, because I think Oklahoma lands Cavante Henry, and I think Oklahoma lands Grayson Halton. So I don't know that they're going to take another big guy like that. Who are the other guys that you named? I'm trying to think.
Connerly.
Well, I said Connor. I don't know that OU lands Connor. I can't. That's on the table. I can't do it. Like, I really can't. I can't say they land Connerly, because it's going to last till March. Like I said, I don't know. I just can't see it. Where do you think OU lands him?
I could not say that with any confidence.
No,
right now,
not at all. That's the most wide open recruitment I've seen in a long time. Like, that.
I mean, if that's a pleasant surprise for OU fans in March or April, so be it. But that's not something you bank on at this point.
No,
not at all. So what you're saying, Brandon, let's recap here. You were saying yes to Henry, yes to Halton, yes to Burt, no to the Cardinal Gibbons guys, and no to Campbell and Connerly.
No, I think one of the two Cardinal Gibbons guys, unless Miami really hits it off, I think they can land one of the two. I just picked R. Mason Thomas. I'm not confident. I think Miami is it's both of those guys with Miami is something to watch very closely. And it seems like Ahmed Moten seems more open about Miami than R. Mason Thomas has publicly. He's been kind of more guarded about the whole situation. So I guess that's my read on it, and that's why my read's like I think he would be a Sooner more than Ahmed Moten. Am I reading that wrong? I don't know.
I would tend to agree with you based on the people I've talked to, which obviously include Thomas and Moten themselves. I'm confident right now that unless something drastically changes over the weekend, R. Mason Thomas is going to be a Sooner next week. And obviously I'm with you on Halton and Burt. My crystal balls reflect that. You got Cavante Henry in the mix. And again, from everything we know, Oklahoma's in a really good spot there. So I think we're probably on the same page. 4 out of the 7 is and you know what? If you end up with Josh Connerly and that's the splash that you close the recruiting cycle with, fine and dandy.
That's a top 5 class, right? I mean, does it not end up being?
I don't know. It would depend.
Maybe 6 or 7, right? I think is where we had it pegged.
Yeah.
When it was all said and done, 6 or 7. I think it was 7, right? 6. Something I can't remember what it was. Honestly, it was a long time ago that we did the math on it. Yeah. But
top 5
and the rankings have changed. Yeah.
Top 5 is pretty set in stone right now, just because some of those programs are so far and away above the rest by virtue of how many guys that they've taken and the quality of the guys that they've taken. Like Texas A&M might have the best recruiting class of all time right now.
I would agree with that, even with the loss
they just lost Harold Perkins, and that's still the case. So
OU fans are wishing they could pull something like that. And I'm not saying they can't, because I you know what, I will say this, and I said it just a second ago. This staff on the as from a recruiting standpoint is way better than the staff that just left. And let me tell you something. The staff that just left had Dennis Simmons, Jamar Kane, those guys. Now, if I threw those guys as far as equals go, yeah, they're up there with the elite. Like Jamar Kane's an elite recruiter. Dennis Simmons is an elite recruiter. Trying to think who else they lost. Roy Mannon's a good recruiter. He's a good recruiter, and people don't want to admit that. And I know they have kind of some vitriol in their heart for him right now, but he's a good recruiter. Lincoln Riley's a good recruiter.
He helped keep Damani Jackson home.
Yeah. He's a great recruiter. Lincoln Riley is a great recruiter. Whether people want to admit it or not, that guy he can sell and he can recruit. Um, who else did they lose from that stat? That's pretty much it, right? Brian Odom's a good recruiter too. I mean, the linebackers they brought in outside of Kanack were Brian Odom guys, and so can't really hate on that. Those are three of the top linebackers in the country that you have on one team. So there's that. I mean, they lost some really good recruiters, and for me to say, I think as a whole, this staff is better currently. That's saying something because that was a great recruiting staff to begin with that they just lost. I just think defensively, when you add Jay Valai, Todd Bates, even Miguel Chavis, who has proven to be a solid recruiter since the day he showed up. He was one of the top guys that landed Jihad Campbell for Clemson to begin with before he ended up flipping. And they flipped because they lost Miguel Chavis and Venables. That's why he left. So, I mean, these guys can recruit, and Brandon Hall is going to be a guy that's going to be able to recruit at a high level. He's never had the OU logo next week. He's done a fantastic job at Troy and other places that he's been to, and he's a Venables kind of guy. He came up with Venables, so he knows what he's doing. This is a great recruiting class, and obviously you have DeMarco Murray on offense. Levy, sorry. Levy proved that he can, recruit by getting Jackson Arnold right off the bat.
He's already got 2 quarterbacks. Yeah, he's got Dylan 2 quarterbacks in a month.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel. And I know people.
Well, I guess if you're talking Gabriel, he's got 3 because you got to throw Evers in there as well.
Yeah, he's got oh shoot, man. Evers was a really good pickup. He's one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the country. So I mean, yeah, he's a great recruiter. You got DeMarco Murray, who landed Stalchuk, and Javante Barnes, who's got himself right in the mix of everybody in 2023 and 2024. Obviously, Bill Bedenbaugh is a great recruiter. Kel Gundy's a really solid, great recruiter. I mean, has recruited well for years at OU. Adrian Peterson, DeMarco Murray, Tashard Joyce. I mean, DJ Wolf, all these guys, they were Gundy dudes back in the day. So, and I'm probably forgetting another guy off the offense off the top of my head. And if I am, I'm so sorry. Joe John Finley, solid. I mean, great. I mean, look what he's pulled in. 2 5-stars this year already. So, I mean, this coaching staff as a whole, I think, is better than the one on the recruiting trail as a whole, better than the one that was there previously. Would you agree with that?
I think all things considered, I certainly would. And, it's one of the things that we've talked about time and time again, the amount of buy-in and investment, not just from this coaching staff, but from folks at the administrative level for the good of this Oklahoma football program is remarkable. And you're seeing that in the continued addition of analysts. You're seeing that in the plans that you and I have reported on, Brandon, that are in place to revamp the Oklahoma football facilities and kind of enhance the overall experience of the student athlete so that when Oklahoma makes the move to the SEC, they can offer everything from academic advising to nutrition that is on par with the SEC powerhouses that they're going to be going toe-to-toe with in that conference.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think, like you said, from an SEC standpoint, I think that was the best move possible, was to get Venables and bring in these guys that know how to recruit the Southeast. Because if you're going to do that, if you're going to play on that level, you need to be on that level as far as recruiting and understand the landscape that you're going into. And I don't know that there's some guys that were on the previous staff that didn't know the landscape because they never recruited outside of just, going in there and grabbing a guy or 2 or 3. That wasn't their main spot to go recruit. And that's where these guys have, cut their teeth at. I will say this, it's not just recruiting that has put Oklahoma on par with this. I mean, we talked about it on OU Insider today, and my little notes I updated. The upgrades that they're doing facilities wise is spectacular, with the training, with the updating of the player lounges and stuff like that. I mean, it's just different. Like, There's a different vibe in Norman than there was previously. And I think anybody who is not blind, and even a blind person, they can see it. They can see it. It is fairly evident what is going on there. And that is that they are making moves and moving that program in a type of way that we haven't seen in a while, since maybe the early Bob Stoops years. It has that vibe, where they're hiring all those guys. They took an assistant head coach in Jay Nunez from Eastern Michigan, who was a defensive line coach, special teams coach, and assistant head coach. Again, the assistant head coach, and took him to be an off-field guy in Norman. That's big time.
And obviously, Oklahoma's a way bigger football brand than Eastern Michigan,
right,
but
still assistant head coach.
To make that transition in terms of roles and responsibilities, to lure a guy like Jay Nunez away from the role he had at EMU is pretty impressive. Let's get to some questions from our viewers. Brandon, here's what we got. Several weighing in on the reality that there's a perception, increasingly so over the last couple of years, that Bill Bedenbaugh is losing his capacity to recruit and or develop, because a lot of fans are looking at the offensive line that Oklahoma had in 2017. They look at the offensive line they had in 2018, and folks are wondering what happened to that kind of dominance. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and let you go. Go ahead. Unleash.
No, because I want you to piggyback off this, because and you can help me with this. Who was the strength and conditioning coach leading up to 2017 and 2018?
I believe it was one Jerry Schmidt.
I don't need to say anymore. The common denominator of why the defensive line and the offensive line got weaker and not stronger. Now, they got more talent, and that was evident on the defensive line side. But as far as strength and being able to not get pushed around at times, or being able to be the bull and not the horn, or however the phrase goes, I suck at that stuff. You understand where I'm going at there. Point being is that Jerry Schmidt had these guys doing different workouts than what Benny Wiley did. Benny Wiley had the offensive linemen running like miles. They were like half marathon guys at times, and that's not what an offensive lineman does. An offensive lineman pushes a guy for a short period of time, something heavy for a short period of time, gets a significant, like a 30-second break, and then does it again. So why would you have them run long distances to build up endurance and not just continue to build the quick twitch and those fibers and the lung capacity to push for 10, 15, 20 seconds and then wait for another 30, 40 seconds before you do it again against a big object? That is the difference between Jerry Schmidt, Benny Wiley, and that is the difference between what you see at the offensive line now and what you see at the offensive line back then. And that is completely different than what we become accustomed to under Wiley. They didn't look the same. They didn't have that girthy look to them that I guess Orlando Brown had, or even a young Creed Humphrey. I mean, he built his strength, which was natural, but he built on top of it with Schmidt, and then things changed. I don't know. I help me out here, Parker. Am I saying this enough where people can understand it?
No, I think you are. And I think what you've expressed is a sentiment that's been echoed by a lot of people with knowledge of the program and just the way that things have unfolded over the last few years as Oklahoma made the transition from Jerry Schmidt to Benny Wiley and its impact on the program as a whole. But I'll say this much: for the people that were ready to run Bill Bedenbaugh out of town, and those people existed throughout the 2021 season, give it 2 more years with Jerry Schmidt as your strength coach. And if somehow Bill Bedenbaugh's offensive line doesn't take a step up, then we can start having that conversation. But
right,
it's going to give you a spoiler alert right now. things are going to get significantly better with Jerry Schmidt back running things.
Agreed. 100%.
All right. Next question. This goes back to the analyst conversation that we were having, Brandon. You look at the guys that have been added to this staff in off-field capacities as analysts, guys like Matt Holacek and Phil Lodeholt and LaDamian Washington. Do you think Oklahoma is lining up those guys for, I suppose, are they lining them up with the intent to promote them at some point in time? Where if you lose a guy like Jeff Lebby, for instance, who's going to have his name crop up in off seasons to come as a potential head coaching candidate, you have a plug and play replacement already on your staff in an off field role.
Well, I think Holacek would go with Lebby. He came with him.
Well,
from
yeah.
Ole Miss, but yeah. So I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying though. Yeah, there's probably some truth to that. I think a sign of a solid program is, building up from within. And that means you have a solid core of support to start. If you can bring that support to be on-field guys eventually. And that was something that Stoops was notorious for. He would have these guys that were, GAs or helpers or whatever. And the next thing you know, they're a position coach. Or, he brought people up from within a lot. And I think that was what made his program different than what Riley had. Riley would fire and then go grab somebody else from the outside to come in and see if they could fix that issue. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. I mean, Saban does that, but Saban also goes and grabs former head coaches, puts them as analysts, and then brings them up to be an OC later on, a la Bill O'Brien.
And he can do that because he's Nick Saban.
Correct. I mean, it's different. I mean, and I think that's what Oklahoma is working to get to with all these analysts and all these positions that they have and the amount of money flowing through there now. And I think that's something that they're going to continue to harness through the years, but it just doesn't happen like that. So yeah, I think that is ultimately the goal, is to have these guys become coaches or, something different than what they already are right now in the future. When that future is the other question, because we don't know how long Bill Bedenbaugh is going to be around. I think OU fans as a whole would hope that's a long time, because he's still considered the best to do it. You would think DeMarco Murray is going to be around a long time. You would think Kel Gundy is going to be around a long time. And you would think that Joe John Finley is going to be. These are Oklahoma guys. Now, obviously, Lebby, if they got a head coaching gig, now that's completely different. But Lebby is a guy that his next step is head coach. It just is. And the second Ole Miss opens up, for whatever reason Kiffin does, you can guarantee you Lebby's name is going to be thrown right there at the forefront of that job search. Now, that doesn't mean he's 100% going to take it, because I think I could see a world where Oklahoma offers Lebby $3 or $4 million to stick around and just kind of ride it out, a la Brent Venables, to when he gets that, that job that he really, really wants. Because Ole Miss is. It's a job. It's a good job, but it's not an Oklahoma job. It's not an Alabama job. It's not Ohio State or Texas or Florida or any of that, Notre Dame, any of those guys. It's not those type of jobs.
They just won 11 games for the first time in the history of that program.
I don't have to say anymore. So
there you go. Yep. That gives you an idea of the discrepancy between Oklahoma as a football brand and somewhere like Ole Miss. And naturally, there's always a chance that when you have the opportunity to step up and be a head coach as opposed to a coordinator, there's naturally a lot of allure there. But make no mistake, I do think that, and I believe the prevailing opinion is that when that day comes, Oklahoma's not going to let Jeff Lebby walk. Not if they can help it. They'll make an effort to keep him around.
Somebody threw around Brian Hartline as an OC if Lebby leaves. I think that would be a hell of a grab.
Oh boy!
From a recruiting standpoint.
Well, if you could get him away from his alma mater, that's the biggest thing, because I mean there may come a point in time at which he's Ohio State's head coach.
Yep.
That's the reality of it.
Unless
Brandon,
certain Cincinnati coach becomes it first.
OU and Kamar Wheaton, is it a thing? Will it be a thing?
I don't think so. I just don't think so. I mean, I could be wrong, but from what I'm hearing, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know how. I think his love for football is what people want to know more than anything else first. So I think I can't answer that with 100% assurance, but right now I think that no, that is not going to be the case. I don't think Oklahoma goes that route.
And I'm with you, because the other thing that probably hasn't been mentioned as much as it should, Kamar Wheaton isn't in the transfer portal right now. He's just away from the Alabama football program. So
yeah, that doesn't
it's
help.
It's a weird kind of twilight zone, and it naturally raises a lot of questions, and the answers to those questions, just because of Kamar Wheaton's nature and the dynamics of the people around him, those questions aren't going to be easily answered, at least not immediately. So one of our viewers would like to know, is there a portal quarterback that Oklahoma should keep an eye on if Jackson Dart chooses a different school?
No, not that I know of right now. I mean, I think Oklahoma feels that they have Nick Evers, they have Dylan Gabriel, and obviously they have everybody wants to say Micah Bowens, but I'm gonna say
Wreck-It Ralph.
They have Wreck-It Ralph, they have Ralph Ruckers. So I think they're okay if that doesn't happen. Now, obviously, you want Dart, and I think in the end he helps you win in the long run, because Dylan Gabriel may just be a 1-year rental for Oklahoma, and he may be off to the NFL because he's not going to get taller. He's not going to get faster. He's not going to get bigger. He's not going to throw for more than 4,500, 5,000 yards again. I mean, he is what he is at this point, and that's not going to change. So he's either going to be a late first rounder, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round pick, and that's what he is. He is what he is. So him deciding to go in the 2023 draft is no different than when he goes in the 2024 draft. So I think he probably leaves after this year if he has a decent season. And so you would want Jackson Dart there to prop in and fill in if you don't feel comfortable throwing out a redshirt freshman in Nick Evers. And I don't know that that's overall the case. I think you just can't pass up a talent on Jackson Dart. And then number two, Dylan Gabriel hasn't been guaranteed the shot to start. Like, he was told he's got to come in. He tweeted it out in his tweet. I'm gambling on myself. Life's a gamble. I'm going to gamble on myself. He wasn't guaranteed the starting spot. In his mind, Caleb was probably coming back to Oklahoma at that point, and so he was going to gamble on himself and see what happened. Caleb's not coming back, so now he's the starter right now as far as it looks. But if Jackson Dart comes in, all bets are off. There you go. I mean, so to answer that question, no, I don't think there's another quarterback right now. But after spring, I don't know. I mean, there could be. There's a good chance that they're going to go after somebody else at the spring game. Spring ball changes a lot of things, and it has every year. There's another flow of transfers after that.
You look at Mike Woods last year as a perfect example. Played in Arkansas's spring game, and then 72 hours later was on his way to OU. So once spring ball rolls around, like you said, Brandon, all bets really are off. And if there are any positions that the Oklahoma staff feels like at that point they need to shore up, they'll go and do so. And that was the case for Oklahoma last year after Trajan Bridges got dismissed and they needed somebody else. That guy was Mike Woods. And so similarly, we'll see how things progress throughout the spring. And maybe Oklahoma's confident that if, God forbid, Dylan Gabriel goes down with an injury, Oklahoma's confident that in that circumstance, they can hand things off to either Nick Evers or Ralph Rucker and be just fine. If they're not, you can bank on them pursuing a veteran guy via the transfer portal. This is an interesting question from one of our viewers, Brandon. Josh Connerly said he liked the NIL pitch from OU. Is there anything that you can offer on that? And is OU playing the big boy game?
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I mean, why wouldn't they? Look, OU isn't the type of program that just comes out and just flashes it, and they never have been. So I think OU is playing games, I think, and it's not even a game anymore. They're doing the NIL stuff. They're just doing it, I would probably say, a little bit more quietly, discreetly, whatever you want to call it. They're doing it though. And I'm sure at some point they'll come out with, the whole pitch for whatever, but I don't know that they're ready to do that. We've both heard stuff about donors and shell companies and all that stuff in Oklahoma. It's coming. It's just a matter of when the donors want to come out and announce it or whatever. So things are in the works. I mean, OU's not stupid, and they're not going to play with one hand tied behind their back. I can guarantee that.
All right, Brandon, a couple more questions to get to before we wrap it up here. On Billy Bowman, does he stay at nickelback? Does he move back to offense? And this is a conversation we've been having now for a couple months.
I think he's going to be a safety, nickel-ish. They're both kind of the same. I would say they're in the same room. So, but I know that OU likes Bowman as a safety, and I know they like Key Lawrence as a safety. So I think those are going to be two guys to watch, whether it's nickel safety spot, the rover guy. I also think Jaren Kanack's a guy that could be that type of guy eventually, kind of like a Isaiah Simmons type. I think he could be that guy. And so we'll see, because he's athletic enough to do it. Ironically, both from Kansas.
And Isaiah Simmons, in terms of versatile athletes defensively, that's always the easiest comparison to make when you're talking about a Venables coach defense, because Simmons is the prototypical model of what a guy like that can become. I believe he was, if my memory serves me correctly, a top 10 overall NFL draft pick. So, especially when you get a guy like Jaren Kanack that has that intriguing blend of physique and natural speed and sheer athleticism, that's a guy you're going to try to work into as versatile a role as possible and just let him roam free in your defense, whether that means putting him at middle linebacker, whether that means making him into a rover or what have you. But Billy Bowman, that's an interesting case, just because there's so much that you can do with a guy like that who plays all three facets of the game so well. I mean, he's a dynamic returner, and I would hope will be used in that capacity in 2022. He's proven his value as both a defensive back and a wide receiver at the prep level. And so really wherever he ends up, you can count on him being in a competitive battle for a starting job, if not being the outright starter.
Yeah, Jaden Rose, another guy, somebody brought him up, is another guy that could play that Isaiah Simmons. And Jaden even told me that's what they've sold him on. Like, hey, you're the Isaiah Simmons type of guy. We want to use you, let you run around everywhere. You're a 4.3 guy. You're a 10.38 type 100-meter guy. So that's what they want to do. And somebody asked another question in there, has a new staff re-offered Brandon Inniss? And I totally forgot to even say this on OU Insider a long time ago, just with everything that's been going on. I talked to Brandon Inniss, and I talked to Trayon Webb in San Antonio face-to-face. And Brandon Inniss flat out told me, I'm still considering Oklahoma. I love Coach Venables. Clemson was high on my list to begin with because of Coach Venables. He was my recruiter when he was at Clemson, and now he's at Oklahoma. It's even better. So, I mean, he hasn't completely thrown Oklahoma out as a potential possibility. I have heard that he's not going to go to the West Coast, whatever that means. We'll see where that goes. So I don't know. He was too happy about all the moves that were made, so quickly, if you will. And DeMarco Murray and Trayon Webb had started to talk quite a bit again, according to Trayon Webb. But I think Georgia and South Carolina are the top two schools for him at this point.
Now, on that subject, with regard to Brandon Inniss, I think that right there, what you just mentioned, Brandon, speaks to how influential Brent Venables is as a leader and as a recruiter, because that's Clemson's defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Ostensibly, he has no business having any hand in Brandon Inniss's recruitment. But to hear Brandon Inniss say, yeah, Clemson was high on my list because of their defensive coordinator, That's bizarre. And it's frankly awesome for the
Right.
Sooner fan to hear, just because of the reality that that's your new head coach, and his influence is only going to be all the stronger with the head coach title and the football brand that Oklahoma is.
The Kobe question keeps getting asked about, him as an edge because of the 247 rankings. Look, he reminds me a lot of Curtis Lofton. He just does, just how big he is, just thick frame, kind of girthy, just, and he's still really athletic. And I get the question that he's not going to be able to move in space like other people and stuff like that. I don't know that I buy that. I think 7-on-7 is never going to be his strong suit. But when you get 11 guys out there, Kobe's a different guy. And he can play that middle off-ball linebacker just as good as anybody that I've seen. He's got great instincts, and I think that's what's going to lead him to be a really good linebacker at some point in time during his tenure at Oklahoma. I'm not sold on the fact that he has to be an edge guy. I think he's going to do just fine at middle linebacker. Now, if he does choose to be an edge guy, he could be really, really good at that too. I mean, he's twitchy enough off the edge, has good enough athleticism and bend that I think he has a chance to do whatever he wants to play as far as linebacker. He has the build to do either or. And Schmitty's going to work him and get him into that mold and body frame that he needs to be. They're going to have him doing different, eating habits and all that stuff. Like, he's never really had any of that. He's even talked about it. He's like, I've never done nutrition. When I get to Oklahoma, everything's going to fall off me because I've never really tried it. So we'll see. I mean, he's lost a lot of weight leading up to going to Oklahoma. We'll see if that continues and his body continues to restructure itself.
All right, Brandon, before we wrap it up here, as we're getting close to 6:00, I want to ask you this, and this is not a listener question. This is just a question that I want to posit to you, and I'll answer it as well. But from now until the spring game, I'll give you 3 guys. Take 3 guys that you are really intrigued to see how much progress they make January to April, and you're going to be tracking them very closely. Who would be the 3 guys that you pinpoint as the ones that Sooner fans should follow closely and track their development throughout the spring?
Oh, I think Marcus Major, number 1. Key Lawrence, number 2. And I'm going to say Clayton Smith, number 3, because you saw them starting to play a little bit at the end of the year, and especially in the bowl game. Clayton Smith got more time. Marcus Major got more time, and Key Lawrence moved back to safety. So he played some corner, but he played a lot of safety, and they're moving him to safety. And I want to see what he does in a aggressive Venables defense. I want to see that next step for Marcus Major, because now that he's going to be playing, Kennedy Brooks is gone. How much is he going to be in that rotation? Is it going to be an Eric Gray, Marcus Major type of deal? I was told if Riley returned, there was a good chance that Marcus Major was going to leave, and Riley leaving was a thing that had them return because they feel like they were going to have a better shot with the new offensive coordinator than they did with the previous one. So I look, there is a lot. There's more than that. I mean, I could say Jalen Redmond, I could say Anton Harrison and Wanye Morris. I mean, there's guys that I want to see. There's probably 10 guys off the top of my head I can name right now. Like, I want to see what they do from January 1st to the end of the spring game. And we're going to know a lot more about these guys here in about 3 months for sure.
Yeah. I think the 3 that I would pinpoint would be, 1, arguably my favorite get for Oklahoma in the 2022 class, Javonte Barnes. I think he's got such a high ceiling and a very realistic opportunity.
Oh, I didn't know we were talking freshman. Dang. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, Javonte Barnes is A1 on my list just because I think he has a chance to be the most impactful true freshman running back that Oklahoma has had on that roster since Trey Sermon in 2017. And I'm interested to see if he can step up and challenge the incumbents in Eric Gray and Marcus Major in that backfield to be able to earn a share of the carries in the fall. And I do think that is going to happen. Another guy that I look at is a guy that has an insane physical ceiling, but that has never firmly established himself as a regular starter. And that is David Agwebu, because I think with Deshaun White coming back and Danny Stutzman being one of those guys that you look at as just
he's going to be a star. Yeah.
He's going to be a star in Brent Venables' defense. You can say the same for Jaren Kanack. I think there's some pressure on David Agwebu to start delivering and start coming into his own as a linebacker, because if not, he's going to cede opportunities to guys like Stutzman and Jaren Kanack.
And does he move to DN with his size? Does he move to DN?
Yeah, that's
switching his size.
Another very legitimate possibility. Yeah. So, and the third guy, and he's in the same room as Clayton Smith that I'll mention, is Marcus Stripling, because
I thought about him too when I said Clayton.
He's shown such brilliant flashes at times. And I think you've seen him demonstrate his ability to get after the passer in particular. Like, pass rushing is where he thrives. And
he's got to focus more. He's got to focus more off the field. I'll just
absolutely.
Leave it at that.
And I'm not saying he's going to be what Nick Benito and Isaiah Thomas were, because that bar is very high. But if he retains the starting role, if he is able to fend off Clayton Smith for that defensive end position, or hybrid edge rusher, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call it, however it is ultimately designated in Brent Venables' defense, if that spot belongs to Marcus Stripling, I'm curious to see how he stewards that and what kind of production he's able to generate from that position.
There is a coach, I won't name him, that knows the situation of Ethan Downs more than almost anybody. And I talked to them and they basically said, that kid is going to be a freaking star. Like, he just has that want to, and he's got all the talent in the world. And so the expectations for almost anybody with Ethan Downs, especially in Brent Venables' defense, where they said he's going to be able to pin his ears back and be so much more aggressive and not have to do a lot of thinking and stuff like that, they think that he is going to be just downright special here in the years to come. So I think that's another guy that we'd be remiss not talking about.
Man, how long have we been banging that drum, Brandon?
I know. I got told by a certain somebody that they called me this past week and told me I was right on him. I won't say who, but they're like, you're right. They just randomly called me. So I mean, they think that he is they think he's going to be downright special too. So that kid has a chance to be really, really good. People are asking about Reggie Grimes. Grimes is going to be a player, dude. Like, that guy. These are guys, like, we expect Reggie Grimes to be really, really good in Venables. These are guys that have been back and forth the whole time. Like, Grimes has got a chance to be downright great at Oklahoma. His athleticism, he was a running back in high school at 250 pounds. A running back. Like, that guy is, he's athletic.
He is one of the most ideal and imposing physical specimens in that entire locker room, regardless of position. Yeah. Ethan Downs, or I'm sorry, not Ethan Downs, but Reggie Grimes and Ethan Downs, both in that defensive end room. There is just so much potential with those two, and potential that I'm not even sure has been shown on the field yet. So
no, both so raw.
So with that, I suppose we'll wrap it up, Brandon, if you want to give them the closing sales spiel.
Yeah. Look, we're at 30% off right now, but we've ran this 30% off, off and on for a long time. But come this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I believe, I can't remember which days it is, leading up to National Signing Day, I think we're 60% off. So that means it's going to be like $40 for OU Insider for 1 year, $40. You're going to get 12 months, VIP, all the stuff that we talk about right here. We don't talk about it very often. We don't do these YouTube lives a whole lot. But we talk about that on the VIP board. All the VIPers, they've known all this stuff for a long time. So this is just us helping you guys out, just trying to give you guys a sense of what you can see on OU Insider. And this coming week, for $40, $43, you'll be able to get OU Insider for 1 year. And that means you'll be able to look at all the other 250 247 sites You'll get to deal with our national guys, whether it's Steve Wiltfong, Brandon Huffman, Greg Biggins, Brian Doan, Alan True, Andrew Ivins, Gabe. Oh my gosh, Gabe Brooks. I just went blank there for a second. Like all those guys. I mean, look, they're the best to do it, and we have the best national team, and we're proud of it. And you'll get to see those guys almost every week. Load something up on our board, get notes that you wouldn't normally get any other place. We drop team notes. I just dropped a whole bunch of team stuff here today. Pretty significant stuff actually, as far as what's going on behind the scenes. So all that right now, ouinsider.com, $43 to get you 1 year here in a couple of days. Now, right now it's 30% off, so it'll be $75. But if you don't want to wait, you can hook up that promo later on too. There's a lot, or you can do $1 for the first month, $9.95 off afterwards, and you can just try us out, see if you like us. I mean, we're willing to do whatever. We love the new guys. I think we ended up with 70 new signups this past weekend. It was really good. We keep hitting, and it's all you guys. You guys are amazing. We keep hitting records each and every week, and we can't thank you guys enough. UOU fans make the place rock, and we do it for you all. And we love our job because of you guys. You guys are the best. And so, yeah, ouinsider.com VIP.
All right. Well, with that, it is a wrap for OU Insider Live. We will see y'all again next Monday at 5 p.m. We're going to do our best to make that the regular time for y'all to tune in, for us to sit down and give you an hour of just nonstop Q&A, recruiting, and team intel. So come next Monday, we'll be back at it. Until then, everybody take care.
This Daniel Blitzer guy is an idiot, by the way. I just want to note that before we get off.
Who's that?
The Daniel Blitzer guy. Just reading his stuff. Anyways,
I don't even know who that is.
Out.
But
read
regardless, that's it from us. We'll see y'all next time.
See ya.